Hello everyone, I am Eleftheria, Community Manager here at CrabNebula, and today I have the pleasure to have with me Johans. We will talk about his product, about his company, and of course about Tauri. We will also talk a little bit about CrabNebula Cloud and CrabNebula's product. Without further ado, let's get started. Johans, would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background for the folks that may not know you?
My name is Johans Justs Eris. I've been a software engineer at the company PhysicalAddons for about a year and a half now. I just finished my third year at university, at the Latvian University Computer Science faculty. Yeah, and for the past year, I've been developing a desktop app with the Tauri framework that manages Blender 3D versions, their add-ons, and the user-created blend files. And it's been part of a larger project where we wish to create a specific manager for our own add-ons, which are able to simulate physical values inside Blender.
Before we get into all of this stuff, because we will have the time to speak about all those stuff that you mentioned, would you also like to share a little bit about how you got familiar with Tauri, how you started to developing in Tauri?
The project first started because we wanted to create a desktop app and we just didn't really know how to. And our first decision was to use Electron.js together with React.js, and it was a bit of a pain. It was kind of confusing, but I think that was mostly because we used a deprecated environment setup. And because I got fed up, I kind of asked my seniors to allow me to switch to a different framework or look for a different framework, and that's how we came on Tauri. And it was extremely easy to set up everything and develop anything. I mean, the hardest part for Tauri is just learning Rust and being able to use it effectively. But yeah, that's how I came upon Tauri. We remade or converted the entire project in about a week's time, and then just continued on from there. And that happened about 2 months into the project when we decided that we needed to change, or that we needed a solution that was much easier for us to handle. And that was also the first time I came upon Rust, or actually started to develop Rust. It was kind of hard in the beginning because I didn't read the documentation at first, and I believe that that would be the first thing to do when you're learning Rust, since the documentation is extremely well written. But in time, I was able to get the hang of it and essentially make it so that most of the functionality of the app is handled by Rust, which makes everything so much easier because of the error handling, because of how fast Rust is, and yeah, that's how I came upon Tauri.
Wow. All right. So, would you like now to actually move into Blenderbase, and maybe you can share your screen as well, explain us a little bit what's going on there, and all this kind of stuff.
So Blenderbase is a Blender version manager, and that's its essence. You can the way that it registers these Blender versions is that it launches their exes and passes them launch arguments. More specifically, it passes launch arguments that allows it to execute Python code in it. And this Python code then goes and registers its data, uh, such as the architecture meant for it, the build date, its patch, no, this is the commit hash, and what type of file, well, where this Blender version comes from. More specifically, if it's a zip, then it means that it comes from a portable build. And we specifically built it because we wanted an easy way to manage Blender versions. For example, I can simply switch between them quite easily. and also see the add-ons that are installed for it. For example, these are our company add-ons. I can simply enable them or disable them. And when launching Blender, I'll be able to see the specific add-on pop up in this panel here. And for example, if I go ahead and disable it, and this would be how you would usually do it with the Blender add-ons, you would go here, you would then look it up, you would then disable it, and it's just a bit more finicky because, well, you first of all have to open the preferences, then you have to search for the add-on, and then click this tiny square and hope that there aren't any errors. But for example, if I do close it here and exit it, then that value will also update in Blenderbase. So it's essentially always up to date with what the last values were saved in Blender. And for example, if I turn it on, then when launching Blender, I will actually get this message in System Console. It was launched through Blenderbase, and that these specific add-ons were either handled or they were enabled. That's more from the actual Blender BPY API that allows Python code to be executed within Blender. And for example, I enabled all of our 3 products, and they're now here. Yeah, that was the first thing that we wanted to do, and then later it just went into essentially a full-on Blender manager. So for example, we have the Blender versions here. We can delete delete them or launch them. We can have an option to also refresh the database that essentially goes through the directory saved here and looks into them and sees if there is a blender-launcher.exe in them. If there is, then it attempts to launch it, passing it launch arguments, that then registers the specific Blender version's data and its add-on data. Then we also have the ability to then go and download any Blender version from the publicly available Blender Foundation resources. So for example, these are the release versions, mostly stable and long-term support versions. Then we have the daily versions that literally change each day. And then we have the patch versions that are minor patches and minor modifications to Blender versions, and users are now able to download any of them as they see fit. And we also have this recent files panel that, for example, lets me open. So let's say I create a new file. Let's save it in the desktop as untitled.blend. I save it, I close it, and it should now appear here. If I open a new file and save it, let's name it something else like second, then it should also appear here. Yes, here it is. It's under 4.2, so the last time I opened this file was in 4.2 Blender series. If I attempt to open it here, it will open in the newest 4.20 version that I have installed. I currently only have one, but it will attempt to open it in the 4.2 version that it has installed. But I can also choose to open it in any version that I want. For Blender, there's the inbuilt option where you can do this yourself, but you would have to change it manually. It's something like what is the primary Blender version in which you want to open a blend file. But I found that for me, it got confusing, and for many of our users, it got confusing. Many times they would open their file in an older Blender version, and then they would report the bug with our products, and that would just get tedious because you have to then explain that they opened it in the wrong version, and also have to figure out how to actually open the file in the right version. So here we can open the file in any version that is currently installed, which you can see here. And obviously Blender tells you if this version is older than the last version that the blend file was first opened. And if I open it, it obviously updates the list and shows that Untitled was now the last open. If I open again, let's say the second in 3.6. No, I don't have it in 3.6, so let me just open it in 4.3. It now shows up there. And that's the main gist of the application. We also have the ability to install add-ons. You would simply choose the add-on you want to install. So for example, if I go and delete the physical celestial objects and then go and install physical celestial objects alpha, it will then appear here. I can enable it, launch, and it should appear here as enabled. It just really helps with developing add-ons and being able to quickly test them, for example. And in the last update, we added a bunch of settings that specifically are meant for quality of life improvements, such as being able to toggle if you want the downloadable Blender versions to be refreshed automatically when you launch Blenderbase, or if you want to check for a new Blenderbase update when it is released, or check it manually if you want to, and get the answer that this is the latest build, you're up to date. And more specifically here, we have a bunch of options that were requested by our users in our Discord server. So for example, I can choose to change the active Blender versions. So the active Blender version would be the one selected here. But for example, I can click here and it will then change this, or I can click here and it will change to that version. It was something that people requested, and I believe it's kind of nice to have. That's the main gist of the program. It took quite a while to get everything going, and
Yeah, but right now it seems like a full app. It seems like it has everything that someone would need.
yeah, essentially there are a couple of features that I want to add specifically. For example, if I am giving the ability to use launch arguments or specific launch arguments that we use for Blenderbase, then I kind of want to give the user the ability to add their own launch arguments when they're launching Blender, or even save them in, let's say, our database and then use them when they want to. But yes, in general, I would say that it handles most of the bases that a Blender user or an add-on developer would need. After a lot of development and fine-tuning, we just decided that it's good enough to be released publicly for anybody to use for free. And
Yeah, of
yeah.
course.
For example, here is the release page for our product. It simply lives in a public repository where we have a private repository from which we take the content. Well, no, well, yeah, where we take the releases from the Blender version, where we build them, and then publish them here. It was something that I saw in the Tauri Discord channel, and I wanted to try because well, for one, it's cheap. It's free for us, and
Yeah.
especially since we're not making any revenue from the product, we just thought, why not take the easier route that we have? And I mean, it's good enough. It has some limitations, but for a free product where we simply want to see what people think about it, I think it's good enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but you also mentioned that you are aware of CrabNebula Cloud,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure like if you have checked its benefits or how it's different from GitHub Actions and stuff like that.
I have checked it out. I did consider using it at first. We simply didn't because all my seniors decided that for now we can take the cheapest route. But I have looked at it and I was very intrigued by it. The pricing was very good. I think it would have made the process a bit easier since I had to figure out how to actually publish the releases to the public repository, and I hadn't before really worked with YAML and GitHub Actions, and they had a couple of different issues. For example, we use npm for our front end, and there was some issue that the GitHub Actions, what was it, runner, the Windows runner just ran out of memory, and I think it was
Mm.
related to npm just leaking memory or something, or maybe it was my fault or something. But
Well, yeah, our goal was to take away all these pain points from developers, and that's why our team created Cloud.
yeah, that was the I did in the middle of finishing the release process think about moving to cloud. I just simply didn't because well, I was given a task, so
Yeah,
I
yeah, of
finished
course,
this, and
that's
then
totally
yeah.
fine. For the folks that are watching us right now, if you're not familiar with CrabNebula Cloud, I will have a link in the description below, as well as I will have links for everything else that we are discussing right now. But also there is a 14 days free trial, so I would encourage you all having a look at it. And if you have any questions, again, you can leave a comment below, or you can DM us, find us on Discord, and yeah, we are trying to be as helpful as possible, but it's also for us a product that we are developing right now, so we are also still working on the documentation and some other stuff, but we will have more updates soon. All right, and if we go back a little bit, what other technologies did you and your team use to build this? You already mentioned a few of them, like obviously Tauri, but did you use anything else?
We for the front end, it was a two-man project at the start, but after we released the first internal build, it became a one-man project with me taking on everything. But the front end was made with Carbon Design Systems. It essentially provides already made components for us to use, and it looked pretty good. It looks pretty good. It's very stylish and very professional looking. And that's why we used it because it looked really good. And for the front end specifically, we chose React.js because, well, we none of us were very familiar with how to make a desktop app or how to develop an app like this. So we simply took the easiest, or what we thought were the easiest tools available. So it was React.js and Electron at first, and then Tauri. But with React.js, we found a couple of problems ourselves. For example, using local states just was pretty hard, to be honest. So another tool that I think that really, really made the whole product actually possible was Zastand. It's a global state management library for React.js, and I use it essentially everywhere for major states that contain lists of data or contain data that I just do not want to use as local states, or just data that has to persist between even links. I just use Zastan, and it's been perfect. It was a lot of just thinking, how can we put all of these technologies together in an effective manner where we didn't have to, what would be the word, like
Yeah.
have to manage all of them, be able to use them in a simple manner that allowed us to easily interchange elements, or not not have to package our app with, let's say, Python for them to be able to execute Python file, but simply then save all the Python code as raw strings and then use them within Blender. But that's essentially most of, if not all, of the technologies that we used in Blenderbase.
Yeah, the struggles that you were describing, I think that a lot of people also have them, and it's the pain point for a lot of developers out there as well. Thank you very much for the for describing all of these things. Would you like also to give us a short introduction about physical add-ons?
Yeah. So at Physical Addons, we develop Blender add-ons that are able to display and sort of simulate physical values within Blender. Our essentially flagship product is PSA, which is Physical Starlight and Atmosphere, which allows you to add a realistic atmosphere and sunlight within your Blender project. I'm currently on my laptop, but I think it should still work. So if we go to the rendering viewport, I think we'll be able to see the atmosphere generated by our add-on. And it should look something like this. So we have several presets and several ways to uh, update the environment that we have developed here. So,
Nice.
for example, yeah, okay, it was just lagging. So, for example, I can add a binary sun, which essentially adds a second sun. I can work with the atmosphere thickness, so I can make it more dense, which essentially just blocks out the sun. Or I can
That's
make the
really
scale.
cool.
Yeah, it's uh, it's our product that the team. I'm a newcomer to the company, but the team has been working on this add-on I think for about 5 years or even longer. It's a very uh, widely used product for a lot of Blender users, and well, for good reasons. It's really good for what it achieves. It also has stars. I think if I put sun even lower, we can see some
Wow.
stars, though I'll probably just increase their, yeah.
Okay, that's really, really cool.
We also recently created, well, not me specifically, I was working on Blenderbase at that time, but we also created a physical open waters add-on. That was also part of a feature film called Flow. Uh, you'll have to look it up yourself, so I'm not that knowledgeable upon it. But this add-on was used in the film to simulate the water that was being shown in it and used in the movie. It
Wow.
essentially just works as it essentially just is a shader that looks like it's water. It isn't a water sim specifically. It's essentially just using math to create a shader that looks like it's an ocean, for example. But that's essentially what we do. We create these sort of add-ons and develop them and keep developing them for users. We have our own website, but maybe I'll rather show our own product page.
I will link that page as well in the
Yeah,
description below for anyone that is
yeah,
interested in this. Right. Thank you very much for the introduction to Blenderbase and to physical add-ons. Again, I would like to encourage people to go and check it out. And as we are coming in the end of this, let's say, interview, do you have any goals or plans for the future?
we essentially want to make a sort of online store, at least for our own add-ons, that would be then connected with Blenderbase. So it would be something like you would log in, you would either redeem an add-on if you've already bought it in, let's say, Blender Market, which is the largest market for add-ons. You would redeem it or you would buy it, and then you would be able to install it and manage its versions within Blenderbase. And not just see the version, for example, but maybe click on it and select a newer build or an older build specific to your own machine specs and what your PC can afford. Maybe you need an older version. Maybe you want to use an older Blender version with an older version of our own add-on. But the main thing is to be able to quickly and rapidly get our newest product versions to our users, since currently an add-on itself is just a bunch of Python files, a bunch of raw Python files that the user himself can go and edit if he wishes to. So adding an auto updater to it for a product that is a, well, is costs money and you have to buy it, it just it's a pretty hard problem to solve if you just want it contained within a single add-on. So the next best thing is to simply make a product that does it for it. So the add-on itself stays as it is, but you are then able to manage its versions, get the latest versions to a different products such as Blenderbase.
Mm.
I haven't mentioned this before, I should have, but there's a open source product called Blender Launcher that really did inspire Blenderbase itself, and it's a bit more lightweight in that it only really manages the Blender versions and manages the downloading the versions. But it has a lot of other features, and the one of that product essentially got archived while we were developing Blenderbase, and I think a lot of Blender Launcher users can, if they want to use a different kind of Blender Launcher, then Blenderbase might also be it. But Blender Launcher did inspire this product a lot, and I owe a lot of I don't know. It inspired us, yeah, a lot of respect for Blender Launcher since it specifically, for example, downloading Blender versions. It's essentially a similar way that they do it. We just do it slightly differently and a bit more simpler. There it manages the Blender versions. For example, they have a directory for release, daily, and patch versions. We just download them into a single directory and just handle them that way.
Thank you very much once again for all those information. Many of them were new to me as well, and I believe our audience have also learned something new. Once again, people that are watching us right now, go and check all the sites. I will leave them in the description below. Also check CrabNebula Cloud. If you have any questions, let me know, comment below, DM us, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, that was it. I hope that everyone enjoyed this interview. If you have any questions for Johans, I will leave his links in the description as well. See you really soon with another video. Bye.